Hi, I'm Edward, and this is my channel Moving Matter, where I talk about ways that we can feel more by tuning into our soul and thinking less by tapping out of our ego. So today's video is about the number 7, specifically why 7 an incomplete is spiritual number. So 7 is a number, obviously it doesn't balance. So when we see 7, we see it in places like the 7 Kemetic principles of Egypt, in Kabbalism, and even the chakra system. So I'll talk a bit about the 7 Kemetic principles of Egypt. Now, I don't have a problem with the way these 7 principles are written and set up, and they're all accurate and they're really well written and structured. It's just that there's more of them. So the way that they're presented, it's like they're the definitive text. It's like, just study all this and you got all the answers. And the thing is, this is incomplete information, which is why it bothers me. So when we look at the 7 principles, 7 Kemetic principles of ancient Egypt, there's actually 12, there's not 7. And effectively what's happened here is these 7 principles are just a retelling of the 12 universal laws, or the 12 cosmic laws. So if you do some searching on the internet, and I wasn't able to find a definitive list that accurately represented this, but I knew when I was studying the Kemetic principles of Egypt that they didn't resonate fully. So they resonated in the sense that all 7 were correct and accurate. I could sense that and feel it, on a soul level. But I sensed intuitively, I was like, there's more to this than what's being presented. And that really bothers me, because to me it's deceptive to only have part of the information, and you're not being guided in the correct direction when you're only being given part of the story. And so as I did my research, I came across all the 12 universal laws, but the thing is I couldn't find a definitive list that accurately portrayed everything. Like in one list, some of the things from the Kemetic principles went there, and then in other lists, there was different interpretations of those, and it's all very messy. So I think that what I'll do is, once I've finished putting these together and sort of drawing from my higher self and ensuring that it all resonates, I'll put together a video that I feel comprehensively explains these, and then I'll talk to that in a future video. So I'm still working on it. It'll take me a bit of time, and I'm not going to do it until I've got it just right. And it may take me another several more weeks or a month or however long, but stay tuned for that one. So with the 7 Kemetic principles of Egypt, it's great that we've got these, but when you see the number 7, generally, because it's a number that doesn't balance, everything in the universe balances. The universe is really, really simple. So when we look at the universe, it's just about balance. It's about structure. It's about consistency. And so there's universal laws or cosmic laws that underpin all of the way that the universe operates. And the idea is, with the Kemetic principles, you study these and you become a master of your soul, a master of your dominion, and therefore you understand how the universe fundamentally works. And I don't have a problem with that concept at all. It's just when you don't get all the correct information. So we see that with the Kemetic principles of Egypt, they form the Kabbalah or Kabbalism, and then that leads off to Hermeticism and Freemasonry and things like that. And I'm not a fan of secret societies or cults or information that is repressed from the public. And I'm certainly not a fan of small groups of people using this information to control large groups of people. That's fundamentally wrong, and it goes against my core beliefs and values. And so that's why I'm alerting you to this, because these groups, from what I can see, and I'm certainly, I've never had experience with these sorts of organizations like Freemasons, and I've never interacted with them directly. And so all my research is strictly, through the internet and reading books and everything and getting a really good feel for it. But on a soul level, I've drawn from my own previous lifetimes experiences, and then I've worked with my higher self, and I've got information. So I can see that there's a lot more to this than just 7. And so it seems to me that all these secret societies, secret organizations seem to have an obsession with the number 7. And look, maybe they've got a couple more steps than they're telling everyone else. I don't know. Maybe with the 7 Kemetic principles of Egypt, ancient Egypt, perhaps that there's 9, and they're just the people in control that run these secret societies have those last couple of steps. But either way, my intuition tells me they don't have all 12, because really, when you've got all 12 and then you master that, that's when you really tune into your divine self. It's not about ego. And so ego is about separation, whereas the soul is about integration. And so when I see secret societies and Freemasonry and all sort of stuff, I just see ego. I see separation. I don't see a desire to be of service to others. I see a desire to be of service to self. What's in it for me? And of course that doesn't resonate with me. So I suspect that they don't have all the secrets either. And my intuition tells me they've just got 7 and they just know how to use it, because they're not sharing information with the rest of the public, and hence that's why they control everything. And so, when I see 7, that's why I see it as an incomplete number. And so what I'd say to you is, when you see these sorts of things and it resonates and you're researching it and you're learning, and it's giving you realizations, and you're becoming more self-aware and raising your consciousness, which is fantastic. Just be aware that anything with a number 7 potentially is not giving you the full picture. It doesn't mean it's wrong. It's just I would look at that and just assume perhaps that there's more to this than what you're seeing. And the reason I say the number 12 balances, and it's a universal, it's a number of the universe. We've got 12 months in a year. There's 12 DNA strands, there's 12 chakras. So chakras is something I want to talk about, because I don't think that the chakras are misleading. There's 7 chakras. However, what I suspect has happened, and intuitively my read on this situation, is that the ascended masters, the great Buddhist masters and teachers, and the Hindu masters, the gurus, and all those amazing people, I suspect that rather than trying to complicate things, we're having 12 chakras and effectively 12 energy centers of the body that you've got to balance and clear to attain true oneness within oneself and balance the 3 bodies. So there's three bodies. There's the mental body, the spiritual body, and the physical body. And so when you balance and clear all 12 chakras, effectively what you're doing is you're syncing and bringing those 3 bodies into perfect harmony, perfect union, perfect marriage. And that's when you regain true empowerment of the self, true spiritual, reclaim your spiritual sovereignty, and your soul permeates throughout your entire body. And so in turn, as the 12 chakras and the 12 DNA strands, they're interconnected. They exist as in an interdependent relationship. So when the 12 chakras, which are metaphysical concepts, when the 12 chakras are balanced and cleared, you'll have all 12 DNA strands unlocked. I mean, we look at human beings now, and we only have like 2 DNA strands unlocked. And so you see stuff about in science and genetically engineering the human body and unlocking those DNA strands. And I'm fundamentally opposed to that, because the DNA strands are tied to consciousness. And so at one point we had all of those open, and my read is in the Garden of Eden. We had all that open, and we were effectively superhuman. That's how we were built, we were designed. And so in perfect harmony. And so when you see the Garden of Eden, you see the stories in the Bible, my intuition, my read on that is that these stories are all accurate, they're true, but there's sort of exaggerations, or there's a dramatization of it. And it's almost, when you read it, it reads very much like humanity needs to be punished because we're bad, which is fundamentally wrong, because humanity's good. But I guess when we're being told the same thing over and over and over, we're being beaten all the time, and we're effectively in spiritual poverty, and being told we're bad, it's very easy to buy into that and just assume that you've sinned. But everyone sins, for lack of a better term. But we can repent, and the key is forgiveness, which I think is a really important part of the Bible. When they talk about forgiveness and repenting, it's about acknowledging your own mistakes so you can learn. It's not a mistake if you learn the lesson. So that's one of the things I look at the Bible, and there's definitely a lot of wisdom and a lot of accuracy in there. But then it's been tainted with this idea that humanity is fundamentally bad and is constantly making mistakes. And even when you see the 10 Commandments, the way that they're structured, it's all negative intended. It's negatively oriented. And if they just tweak that slightly and made a positive orientation, I think that things would be a lot better for humanity, because obviously the Bible has had a huge part in human history. And I'm not religious per se, but I draw a lot of cues from that, a lot of wisdom, because I can sense that and feel that in past lives I've had a strong connection with the idea of angels and the Bible and fundamentally that the overarching values and so forth in there, and the purity of the human soul. And so when I look at the Garden of Eden and Adam and Eve, it looks to me like, and I feel very strongly that they were telepathic. And so when you clear and balance the 7 chakras, and then you got the remaining 5, so that's going up 7 to 12. What happens there is you do some searching on these 12 chakras, and you'll see there's no consistent list anywhere, but they talk about this sort of stuff in the Vedic texts, the precursor to Buddhism and Hinduism. You'll see things in there like telepathy, you'll see things like telekinesis, you'll see things like levitation, you'll see things like Akashic records, advanced healing. Advanced healing is energy healing, so that's like it's healing of the soul, but it's also physical healing of like wounds. Like Jesus was reported to have healed people of leprosy and things like that. And so when I look at us as a species, I feel that very strongly we're de-evolved. We've been de-evolved. And so I suspect it goes back to the Garden of Eden. Like Graham Hancock talks about, we're a species with amnesia. And I feel like he's spot on with that. Like he's a very intelligent person. And so when I look at the Garden of Eden, it looks to me like Adam and Eve had their 12 chakras cleared and balanced. They had all their 12 DNA strands unlocked, and they had access to those higher level functions. And that's why they were walking around the Garden of Eden, and everything was just perfectly in bliss as paradise. And they weren't getting eaten by tigers and lions. You see depictions of it, and there was animals, there was tigers, all the animals were there, and everyone just was in balance. There was no problems. And so it's when they ate from the forbidden fruit, and I don't believe that God punished them and was warning them. I think God was trying to to let them know you've got free will, you've got full consciousness, but here's a heads up, like if you can do whatever you want, and that includes you can suffer. And because Adam and Eve didn't understand suffering, they were tempted by the snake, and I feel like that's a non-earth based entity, and I don't think it's just a snake. And I look at all this, and effectively what happened is they were tempted, but I also think they were set up because they were naive, and they existed in perfect harmony, perfect balance. So they have no idea about suffering. They had no idea about how dark things could be. And so when they ate from that, they fell for that trick, they ate from that tree, and they got the knowledge. They started thinking, and they moved out of a feeling body, so out of a soul body. And that's when they started to develop the ego, the self. And so as they left the Garden of Eden, and God warned them, which I interpret God to be universal consciousness, the fact that everything's connected, they were given guidance, but they've got free will. So God warned them, universal consciousness. It's like if you leave, you'll suffer. And then they left, not knowing what suffering meant, not understanding any of this. And effectively, they were in hell because they started to de-evolve, And I think that over a period of time, whether or not it was in their life, I suspect it was in many lives after that, those DNA strands got less and less and locked up. And then they moved out of the 12 chakras and went down and down and down until we're in the current situation where we're effectively locked in our lower 2 and lower 3 chakras. So when I look at this, that's what I read in the situation. And so when I see anything with 7, that's why I look at it very skeptically, and I just assume it's missing something. But however, when I see 12 is a universal, it's the number for the universe, it's the number of the universal laws. And so I fundamentally think that the chakras themselves, the 7 are a guide. And so what happens, I think that the ascended masters use the 7 as a way to guide people. Instead of giving you 12 and overwhelming you, it's like, here's the 7. Once you start to clear and balance those 7 chakras, and you generate that electrical flow metaphysically through the chakras from the root to the crown chakra, once there's enough power going into that crown chakra, even if it's just a small bit, universal consciousness kicks in, and then you start to get wisdom. You start to download information from the cloud. And I see a lot of this in the spiritual community on YouTube and so forth, where people talk about getting divine downloads, and I think they're spot on. I think that that's their crown chakra. My strong feeling is that they're getting that from their higher self, and so they're getting that source of wisdom, and it's trickling through, and it's helping, it's guiding them back to their original self. It's completion, to unity consciousness. It's guiding them back to a place of divineness, divine oneness, where the human being is perfectly balanced, mind, body, spirit. There's 3 bodies, and then they're connected to universal consciousness at all times. And that's the way we were. Like we're grounded on Mother Earth and from our root chakra. Then our crown chakra connects us into the heavenly realms, which is everything. And then you've got those 5 remaining chakras, which give you all of your metaphysical abilities, like I talked about, like telekinesis, levitation, Akashic records, healing, etc., etc., etc. And the thing is, the Vedic texts, when you research these and study it, and certain Buddhist texts and Hindus, like you can see there's all these references to humans having abilities, like especially the Vedic texts. It's like it's not even a big deal there. And and so what happens is we've had that taken from us because we made a decision to better understand the nature of who we really are, and so we effectively chose to counter to what we were in the Garden of Eden. We chose to have an experience like, what's suffering mean? Like, we're in paradise. Like, what's the opposite? So we created duality, and I feel that now, as we're moving into the 2020s and 2030s, we're starting to go back into a much more spiritual period for human beings and human evolution. And so we are now, everything's starting to fall apart energetically, because everything that existed was in service to the self, the ego. It's very egoic, but now it's going to fall apart on every level, and then things are going to be rebuilt in truth, in consciousness. And so I think that what's happening now is there's a massive shift in conscious awareness, and spiritual awakenings are happening all over the place. And so as we raise our consciousness individually, we are raising the consciousness of the whole of humanity. And so those that aren't awakened are getting pulled up as well. And so it's going to be very interesting to see this shift. But to see, my feeling is we're not going to go back to the time where we had Adam and Eve where everything was perfect. I think it's going to go to more of a period where we'll have really advanced people in society spiritually guiding the rest, and then we'll have those other people who they want to balance, they want to stay like half ego, half soul, and have that union, that balance. And so it's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out over the next couple of decades. So yeah, getting back to the chakras, I feel that seven is the guideline. That's what gets us to connect to our higher self, and then the remaining 5, which gives us 12, is what gives us all those extra superhuman abilities. And I don't certainly profess to have access to those superhuman abilities, not yet anyway, but my goal is to clear and balance all 12 chakras and to unlock all 12 DNA strands, because I can feel intuitively our DNA strands are tied to consciousness. We don't need to genetically alter our bodies. Our bodies are, the way we're designed, we're intended to be operating, is perfection. And so we're just not operating the right way because we're operating in an ego which effectively suppresses our spirit and puts us into a very self-oriented mode of operating. And then all of society is set up that way. So everything's designed to keep you there and lock you in. It's like a maze, of the mind maze that stops you getting into your spirit. So that's my goal, to try and to balance and clear all 12 chakras. And I'll talk about that more and like what I'm doing to do that and share that with you in future videos. But right now I just wanted to talk about why I feel that 7 is a spiritually incomplete number. And to recap, if you see, as I said before, if you see 7 and you're studying this, great, and it's resonating. If you're studying, say, the Kemetic principles, 7 Kemetic principles of ancient Egypt, and Kabbalah and other texts, and it's resonating, fantastic. But just be very mindful and very conscious of the fact that more than likely you're not getting the complete picture. And I would recommend studying those 12 universal laws, and I will do a future video on that, as I said earlier. So if you have any questions or comments, please let me know in the comments below. And I hope you like this video, so please subscribe and like if you enjoyed it, and please share it. And if you didn't like it, please dislike it and let me know down below. And I'll see you in the next one. Thank you very much.